Velma, as I just mentioned, from Scooby-Doo. Now, there is different variations on Velma. There is the new Velma, which is created by, I can't remember her name, but I know that a lot of people had like a serious split opinion on that new Velma series. It's not that Velma, it's the previous Velma from the Scooby-Doo that has been around for generations, for a fairly long time. The original Velma, as she has her mannerisms within the game, and her voice actor, her original voice actor, and more. So that's the Velma that is currently in the game. Now, there's a really strong point that I will be making about Velma in this breakdown as to the reason why MultiVersus player base has declined. There's a huge gaping issue with Velma in the game. Now, it's something that we want from the character Velma in the game. It's something that we really want. I'll be talking about that and why player first games should really introduce something that I will be touching on in this podcast. So it's something really important. We also have Jake from Adventure Time. Now, Adventure Time is a Cartoon Network release show, and Jake is one of the main characters. Now, Jake, of course, is one of the most popular characters in is one of the most popular characters in Adventure Time, the cartoon show, and he is also in the game. He has a very versatile moveset because there are things that do come into play with when you're playing as Jake in the game. So when you're playing as Jake in the game, there's different things. For example, players can bounce off him when he's using a certain attack, and there's things that he can do that can influence projectiles and more. So keep in mind that everything was very well rounded in terms of the moveset of these characters. When you were playing as a character in MultiVersus, there was a lot that was introduced that was in character for those characters, and that really did sort of give us a nice taste, if you will, as to what we was then thinking would then come to the game as a result of that. So it was well rounded in the respect of, with the moveset of each character, it really did play into that character's strengths as to what the character was able to do with their capabilities. But there are some that sort of break the rules, and Shaggy is one of them, and we'll touch on that in a moment. If you look at Shaggy's moveset, it's sort of like he never does that in the show, but it makes sense for the memes and what the internet community was making of Shaggy anyway. So there's things that we were making out for Shaggy, and then he was then, you know, making that sort of like a gaming reality, if you will, sort of like a gamer's fantasy come to life. So there are various fantasies of pop culture cartoons icons like Shaggy that have been around for generations, and we sort of, you know, made things about that character into a meme, and those memes were then realized in the game. So I didn't talk about Shaggy to begin with, actually, at the start of that. I sort of just breezed over that, so might as well talk about it now. So Shaggy, as you know, he has like a sort of Dragon Ball sort of aspect to him, and that is basically player first games really, you know, taking into account the memes online of what we made Shaggy to be, even though he wasn't that in his own show. So Dragon Ball, as you know, Dragon Ball Super, Dragon Ball Z, there are various power-ups you can do. You have a power-up aura. You've seen me use the power-up aura in a piece of content where I've created the effect when I'm talking about Gohan joining Fortnite. And, you know, it really does give Shaggy a completely different dimension, as well as, you know, things that are actually in character for him, like his sandwich. Now, we really did enjoy that when Shaggy was first released, and there were a lot of Shaggy fans who were like, yes, now this is the Shaggy that we need in a beat-em-up game. So he was sort of, you know, changed, if you will, in a positive manner, in a positive light, in a positive direction for his character, out of character, but within the internet fantasy. So it's like an internet fantasy version of Shaggy, but it is actually Shaggy the character who's doing what he's doing. Shaggy is sort of like a scared, is normally in his original adaptation in the cartoons, he's really scared, timid, sort of shy, doesn't want to mess around too much, wants to go the safe route all the time, kind of a scaredy cat character. That's who Shaggy is. Just like Scooby-Doo, he doesn't want to go after the ghosts, but it's really funny that his job is actually to go and find out if and debunk these ghosts and hauntings. So a really scared character who goes after really terrifying Ghostbusters like debunking ghosts. So it's sort of like that's Shaggy's character and what Shaggy is. He also gets very hungry a lot of the time, which is like comfort eating. So Shaggy comfort eats, but he never puts on weight. So there's a thing there as well where he sort of has like a bottomless pit stomach maybe, because him and Scooby-Doo eat a lot of Scooby snacks, but they never put on weight. That has been played on in the new Velma series, but in a direction of which it's sort of like adult humor and taken into a context of which people didn't really appreciate, which is what makes that show polarizing. But yeah, that was taken into a different direction as to he's got the munchies, and it's like, no, he's comfort eating. That's what Shaggy's doing. But that's the point in that show over there, and what they were doing with that show. They took something to the extreme, into a direction which was completely adult and sometimes slightly offensive, depending on what type of audience is watching that. So coming out from that, the next character we have on the list here is Gizmo. So Gizmo is from the Gremlins show back in the 80s. So it, again, I would call it a retro character, as there are a lot of the gaming player base that was joining in that may not have known who Gizmo is at all. So Gizmo being a part of the Gremlins franchise, there was things that I thought he would have straight away, but it wasn't. It was sort of like a cosmetic added later on. So Gizmo has like without any spoilers for those of you who may go back and watch the Gremlins, he has an outfit, a workout outfit, where he's getting ready to take on the evil gremlins, and he's like having, he's sort of been like bullied by the other gremlins at one point, or, he has to sort of defend, I can't remember the guy's name, but like he has like a human friend, and he has a workout montage, he has a training montage. So I thought that's what he would be initially, the only first cosmetic skin that Gizmo would have. He doesn't. He has his standard without that workout kit, but like Shaggy, he has different variations as well. So there are variations on the characters in the game, which we will talk about as well, just like I said I would about the Velma topic. After this, you also have Finn. Now, Finn is from Adventure Time. There are things about Finn that they really did go a little bit further into. For example, there are different gadgets in Adventure Time that they do use. Guillermo, I think, is one of them. I'm not a huge Adventure Time fan, but I did actually watch it at one point where I was with some friends who were more like Shaggy, let's put it that way, and they thought the cartoon was absolutely hilarious when they was in a higher state of consciousness. Let's put it that way. So yeah, those people, those are some adults that actually do watch Adventure Time, and what made Adventure Time sort of pop off here in the UK, as well as kids also enjoying it and it's being on a kids channel. And then it sort of flattened out because it's then just kids that are enjoying it from the initial hype and push of what the cartoon was, because of the type of animation and the facial features that were done were sort of a part of, it really fit into the memes that were created at the time. So there were a lot of memes at the time where Adventure Time was creating, and those sort of meme faces and things that were being created online and used in posts and stuff on social media, Adventure Time sort of like sat in a position just after that. So it was marketed really, really well at the time. It was very well timed as that was sort of phasing out in the internet, and you had those meme cartoon faces that were being created of like everybody. Like, it's sort of Adventure Time then came in with that animation type in a cartoon show that was digestible and for everybody. So it was an E for everybody kind of cartoon. You can watch Adventure Time and there's no sort of like offensive language or anything like that. Adult Swim was around. Adult Swim's a cartoon, well, not a cartoon channel, it's a channel that occasionally aired cartoons with adult nature. So there's some cartoons with adult nature. Adult Swim was a channel that would air those type of cartoons, and Adventure Time would fit in even without it having too much adult humor at all. A lot of cartoons nowadays, you might find some adult jokes in there for the adults that might be watching it with their children, because the adults are the ones who have got the money. So when kids come to go to the cinemas to go and watch a cartoon, if the adult's not paying for it because they think it's absolute poopy doop, then nobody's going to watch the show, because the adults won't give the children to go and take them to go and watch the movie in the cinemas, or even turn on the channel or purchase the channel in the first place. So we do always have to keep in mind that although you're product, whether it be a game, TV show, or movie, maybe for a younger audience, it is the adults who will have to give the money for the child to go and watch those things. So that's really important, and we will touch on that as well with MultiVersus, as there is money circulating through the game. There are purchases that you can make in the game, and that money has to come from somewhere, and it initially comes from the parents. So if you sit and think, you yourself that might be listening to this podcast, you might be of a younger audience, you know yourself, you cannot work until you get to a certain age, so your finances are going to come through the adult, and adults are paying even more attention and will pay more attention going forward as to what adults are giving to their children or teenagers in order to spend their money on. So that's going to become a trend. It's going to become a stronger trend. And in terms of gaming and gaming sessions, it's going to it's going to play into that as well. A lot of adult gamers do play MultiVersus, and why the player base was actually dropping is because a lot of the adult gamers and the more serious esports gamers that might be teenagers and so forth started to come out of the game as well. Now, they did find ways to try to bring the esports gamers, the professional gamers, back to the game, and that was the ranked mode. Now, let's keep going through the collection. There's a little bit more that we need to go through here. We also have Rick, and as I've mentioned, Rick and Morty, the show. So Rick is one of the main characters. Again, very popular. People did actually go for Rick more than they did Morty, because Rick is sort of, from what I can see from the show, he sort of looks like more of a main character than Morty. Morty sort of seems like a supporting role to Rick. So Rick being added to the game was slightly a little bit later. They do have their own battle stage, which does sort of add to that. And we'll get onto the battle stages and stuff as well when we're dissecting what happened with MultiVersus and why the player base was actually dropping. But there's a lot there with Rick. At that point in time was a huge point in time where the game started to face a lot of issues. When Rick was added, there was a lot of issues. It was around about that time where the player base started to get a little bit hurt about what was happening with the game, and that's when the numbers began to decline, and it wasn't spotted quickly enough in order to fix. But there are some fixes, and we're going over them in this video as to what Player First Games can do with MultiVersus to bring it back to the glory of its earlier days. Now, most games, as you already know, have a decline anyway from the initial release to when it starts to balance out. So there's normally like a balancing flow between the player base and how many people are playing. It does matter on which platform we're talking about as well. So we'll be talking about multiple platforms. We won't just be talking about one platform in terms of MultiVersus. There are multiple platforms that this game can be played on, and there's multiple ways that you can purchase the game as a result. So moving on from Rick, we have... now, I haven't watched Game of Thrones too deep either, and people were telling me from my perks video on this character that I was actually pronouncing her name wrong, but I'm still going to try to give it a go. I think it's Arya Stark. Now, Arya Stark is from Game of Thrones, and as you know, she has a sort of, from what I researched of the show, because it's, you're gonna have to watch the whole series, but I think it's actually available. It might be available on Netflix, or it was at some point. Originally here in the UK, it was on the Sky Channel's Game of Thrones. And basically, Arya Stark has an ability where she can steal people's faces. Now, I know she does something similar in the show. I'm not sure if it's like more of a brutal thing, but Arya Stark has that in the game. One thing that I find really hilarious about her is she has these voice lines that actually do, it gives some emotion behind her character. Like, for example, she completely in character occasionally says, "No mutton soup for you. No mutton pie for you." And I think that's absolutely hilarious, because I think mutton is absolutely beautiful. So I actually feel quite hard, I'm quite hurt about it whenever she says it. I'm like, but I really like mutton. So when she's like, "No mutton soup for you," like at the end of the gameplay, I actually get quite cut up about it. I'm like, not soup, but mutton pie. I'm saying mutton soup because that's a very Caribbean thing to make. So mutton soup is an actual thing in the Caribbean, for those of you who don't know that, which is the reason why I was saying mutton soup. So yeah, there's a little bit of culture behind that as well for you. So she has a very good moveset. The type of character she is in the game is assassin. She's a hybrid, which means that she has a varied amount of attacks. Her attacks are going to be varied between either two types of movesets or one, and that's what makes her an assassin type. And then she is from Game of Thrones. Now, Game of Thrones characters, there are a lot apparently that could provide more to MultiVersus. Now, I know that there's one very strong popular character called Jon Snow, and I know that that character would bring eyes to the game. Probably wouldn't bring players to the game, but it probably would bring eyes to the game, and there would be that slight push of, oh, Jon Snow is now in MultiVersus. There would be that slight push of you being able to say to somebody, an adult gamer or somebody who doesn't game, you could say, hey, yo, you know Jon Snow is in MultiVersus. And that's part of the appeal of MultiVersus as well. It was bringing people to games that originally may not have played games, a lot like very big game franchises do. That's what big game franchises do. They're able to bring more eyes to the game, and the game is also able to bring more eyes on franchises that might not have originally had that audience initially watching their show or watching their movies and so forth. So, and not to mention that MultiVersus also does the moveset thing. So the moveset is within character. And as I said, it also was playing into the memes of those characters as well. Those sort of fantasy versions of the character. So I'm just going to quickly go back into the game because I need to go back into the game. But just before we do, I'm also going to let you know that there also are some articles that we will be covering as well in this one. For example, if I go up here, you can see that the article that we're going to also cover is from a credible source. It's written by Owen S. Good, and it states, player count plummets for Warner Brothers smash like MultiVersus. So the thing about MultiVersus is the way it's marketed is also not the way it was received by the press or by the normal gaming anchor press. So the way the normal gaming anchor press were receiving the game and also talking about the game is, and some of the gamers as well, were actually putting it this way, and it sort of did put it at a disadvantage. The reason why, well, let's cover it first. So they were saying that it's more of a Smash Bros clone, and the reason why MultiVersus has this perception of a Smash Bros clone is because Super Smash Bros is one of the biggest, is the biggest platform fighter beat 'em up game to exist. It's the biggest platform beat 'em up game to ever exist. And when this fact is in place and everybody knows it, it's actually at a disadvantage. The game itself is at a disadvantage, but there's also some pros to that as well. And what I mean by that is, if your game is sort of being marketed as a knockoff version to another game, it puts you at an advantage because you have a room to exceed that expectation. So you have a chance to really exceed the expectation of, oh, I'm just a Super Smash Bros knockoff. And then you have the disadvantage of being, well, I might not have played Super Smash Bros because it was only on one platform, and I don't really, I didn't like the look of that game. Well, I don't know who's saying that, but let's say you didn't play Super Smash Bros. You might not have then gave the game a chance because you didn't play Super Smash Bros. Anyway. Now, Super Smash Bros. is an absolute colossal game. It's a huge game. It was doing what Fortnite was doing before Fortnite existed, right? So things that Fortnite is doing now, I mean, Fortnite is a completely different, is on its own planet right about now. But initially, when it began to branch into adding new properties to the game, it was also given the sort of disadvantage of being compared to games like Smash, because you've got multiple properties in the game. And when like, as I said, there are some pros and there are some cons to that. Now, I think Fortnite has absolutely blown that perception out of the water, because Fortnite is a completely different. It's so big, and there's so much going on in the game, and it's becoming an absolute must-have staple of gaming, regardless of if you like it or not. Right, if you're a fan of if you're a fan of Fortnite or not, it's becoming a staple. It's cementing its lifespan, and it's cementing its capability, and it's cementing what it is. There's no way that something that huge can be knocked off. But in its early stages, like how MultiVersus is in its early stages, it goes to show that this can happen, and there can be some huge gaping issues as a result of some things that are happening externally and internally, and we will be talking about that as well, and with the gameplay. So when gameplay issues are faced, it goes to show that game developers shouldn't really sleep on their game. But also there is some money that needs to be spent and needs to be had in order to keep the gamers around. There is a expenditure that is sort of like, it's untouched ground, and especially for the type of game that this is. I mean, because I really don't think Player First Games thought that the game would be as a success as it was in its early stages. I really don't think they expected it. I don't think they were looking and being like, oh yeah, definitely our game is going to be as big as it is, one of the biggest gaming launches of a beat-em-up game ever. Because that's what it was. It was one of the biggest game launches of a beat-em-up game ever. It had one of the biggest player base of a beat-em-up game. It broke records in its release. But with that does come the downfall sometimes of there was reasons behind this push, and there was reasons behind its success, and there was things that came into play that then weren't capitalized on because of many different reasons. And this is also what we're breaking down in this video, as us in this podcast, because I've said that it hasn't been, these things haven't been touched on, and now it's our responsibility as the gaming industry, and I'm taking it on myself as well, because I need to start these conversations on the main issues so that the dialogue can be had, and then the developers and the gaming industry can take note, and we can make sure that these games do not fall prey to these issues, and we can talk on it, and then we can all win. We can all win, because content creators can be a huge indicator to how a game is performing. Hands down, a content creator's success can be an indicator to how a product or a game is performing. And the way you can do this is you can measure the viewership of that game on that channel. I can measure my MultiVersus viewership on my channel. I can see which videos and topics within that game are successful and which ones are less likely to grow as fast or to grow at all. And the reasons behind this, I get to see the data because I'm making the content about it, so I can see those issues. I'm also getting to talk to my fellow gamers, and you guys get to chime in and also have that talk as well. So when I'm sharing these videos out and these podcasts out and they're able to reach eyes, it's able to reach the developers as well, which is also a help. Now, Player First Games did have a ambassador program. Now, the ambassador program, I feel like it could have been more open, a lot like how Fortnite's Epic support system is also open for a creator support code and the creators. Now, Epic do have a creator program. I feel like MultiVersus could have gone towards the same direction, as it was an opportunity for content creators to grow in that way, as opposed to sort of locking it off to content creators that might already be a success in a certain field or on a specific platform. Now, there's a lot to break down there. For example, they might have had a lot of Twitch gamers as a part of an ambassador for MultiVersus. And don't forget, there are some perks of becoming an ambassador for MultiVersus. So when you're an ambassador for MultiVersus, what it means is you get some early releases that you can then use in your content. For example, if there's a new skin to a character, if you're an ambassador of MultiVersus, you get to use and show off and talk about that new skin before everybody else does, because you've been accepted as an ambassador. But what I saw happening when this was when they were announcing the types of creators that they were using for this ambassador program, it was one type of creator, and it was most of the time on a specific platform. So it wasn't, as you can see, because you can probably see it already, there wasn't too many YouTubers or content creators on YouTube or on let me give another one, Twitter. There wasn't a lot of Twitter influencers. There just wasn't specific. It was just very specific. It looked very specific to a specific type of creator, and I think that also harmed the chance of really, getting that push for those type of things. Now, there are some skins that I didn't even know even existed because of this. So there are some skins that, we all consume, a lot of us consume our content on the internet. I'm just going to take a quick sip of my coffee before it gets too cold. We all nowadays get our content from the internet. I've said this before in a previous podcast episode. Many of us, many millions of us get most of our content from the internet. It doesn't matter what site you're on, you're going to get most of your content from the internet because you can get it on the go. It's convenient, and there are a lot of other reasons that you could mention of why you watch the internet more than you might listen to the radio. It's just that simple, and that's the reality of what's coming forward and what's going to continue to grow. It doesn't matter what I say about it. It doesn't matter what the next man or woman says about it, or the next person, they or him or her. It does not matter. The internet is going to stay in the position that it is. It's going to continue to grow because that's where people can have a dialogue. It's that simple. That's where people can have a dialogue, and if there's a place where you can't have that dialogue, then it won't grow as much, and it won't get that push, because you won't have people talking to people or able to get out a voice or have a voice at all. When that happens, it won't grow. That's the reality of it. If television decided to have a channel which is just people on YouTube, then you'd find that that channel would probably grow. And the reason why it would probably grow is because there's going to be people that are able to talk about things. But of course, there are different types of people that are in charge of different platforms, and that changes how you are able or enabled to talk on what topics you are able to talk about, what needs to be censored and not, because at the end of the day, it's going to affect the cash flow of that product if you are talking about a specific topic. Now, it's great when a platform decides to tell you, yeah, you can't talk about that topic, and that's why your videos aren't growing. So just like to inject there and just put that in, and that's part of the reason why I think that MultiVersus, what was it called again? See, I've forgotten the name of it. Like there was the ambassador program. It's that unknown. It's that nobody knew about it. Well, it was just really sort of. It could have been marketed better, and the way it could have been marketed better is getting a content creator like myself that would have spoken about it, like I would have spoken about it, but because they decided not to have my peers and myself from specific platforms, then that's why I was like, well, I'm just going to have to allow them to just pick that one platform, and then they'll see what happens. Sometimes you got to let the results talk for themselves, and that's why Fortnite was more successful in this regard with their program, as opposed to the program that MultiVersus offers, which was very close. Like, it was just very specific. So that's an area where MultiVersus player first games could focus on in order to help revitalize the game, because content creators can absolutely explode a game. The only reason why Among Us, don't get me wrong, Among Us is a well thought out game, but the reason why Among Us took off so quickly is because a content creator was showing everybody what that was and how to have fun in it. in the way that they were having fun. There are intelligent ways that we have fun, and there are intelligent ways that we do stuff, and that can actually shine a light on those things. So yeah, just thought I'd mention that as well. Right, so that article that is written by, I think it's, who do we say? It was Owen S. Good. That article that is written by Owen S. Good really does put MultiVersus in that box of it's a Smash Bros clone. And as I said, when that happens, there were some pros and some cons, and there was also some pros and some cons to their ambassador program that could have really have taken a different direction. Now, I do know that there are some constraints that need to be in place because it's Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is very high prestige. You cannot have somebody who's creating, and as I said, and that's the reason why I just mentioned this, you cannot have somebody that's talking about a topic that can harm the brand and then have that content creator create as an ambassador of your brand, because what it's going to do is it's a conflict of interest. You don't want the conflict of interest if somebody's said something that is harmful to a community or some type of hate speech or something. It just wouldn't go down well, because then everyone's going to look at you like, why have you got this content creator who engages in hate speech then promoting your game as an ambassador? So that's what I'm talking about there, and that's why I think they played it safe with a community that they know more. So I think that maybe one of the developers know a specific platform more, and that's the reason why they might have chosen to do that with the ambassador program. Right, so after Araya, Stark in the characters that are available in MultiVersus, you have Tom and Jerry. Now, Tom and Jerry is such a unique character, and the reason why Tom and Jerry is such a unique character is because actually two characters in one in this game, and I think that was really done well in terms of the moveset and what's available, because you can literally drop Jerry into a position, and this little absolute annoying little mouse is really hard to smash off the platform. So when Jerry's around, you're just like, man, I gotta avoid it for that golf ball, man, because it gets quite difficult if Jerry is in a position where you can't take him out and you need to take him out, and he's bouncing balls off your head playing tennis with Jerry. So that was really well done, and it's also in context with those characters as well. So there's a lot going on there as well. Tom and Jerry is also a favorite of fans because obviously it's its own product as well. So there's a Tom and Jerry movie. Those movie numbers are then coming to the gaming industry, and it's also helping the gaming industry to push those numbers in the movie industry as well, with movies like Tom and Jerry the movie or Tom and Jerry the cartoon. As you know, they are staples of cartoons. So there's a lot to go on there. And their moveset, I think it's a mage. I think they're a mage class. Yeah, they're a mage class, a hybrid type character. Right, so it goes to show, it's really well thought out. There are other mage characters that I do enjoy, and they're completely different. They play completely different. Tom and Jerry plays very different to Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny is also a mage, right? So it's mages seem to be able to conjure up items in different ways. But there are some hybrid characters. Well, I would consider Finn a hybrid character, but he actually just get it out of his bag, right? So he's not really using any sort of magic in order to conjure this thing up. He's actually using like a bottomless bag. So it's more of an item, but that's also really well thought out. So coming out of that, next you have the very popular Harley Quinn. Now, as you know, Harley Quinn is from Batman DC Comics and also does have a movie adaptation as well. Harley Quinn is also in Suicide Squad, 2 Suicide Squad movies. So she has a movie adaptation as well. I think the actress is Margot Robbie, who plays Harley Quinn in the movies. Harley Quinn also has her voice actor as well. Another thing just went into my mind about that is the voice acting was spot on for these characters. It's literally the characters. When you hear those voices, you're like, that is definitely their character. I don't think LeBron does his own voice. Does LeBron do his own voice? I'm actually going to quickly have a look at that in a moment. Who voices LeBron? I don't think it's actually LeBron in that voices his character in MultiVersus. So I'm going to quickly have a look at that because that's really interesting. LeBron doesn't voice his own, but it might be because scheduling scheduling differences there. Yeah, so it's not actually LeBron James who voices LeBron James in MultiVersus. It is actually John Bentley. Right, so that goes to show John Bentley voices LeBron James in MultiVersus. And there could be a variety of reasons for that. One, because voice acting does require you to emote in a specific way. And also, it's very difficult to do. There's a lot that goes behind voice acting. It is not an easy role to take on, especially if you're a natural talker and not somebody who knows how to manipulate your voice in a specific way, right? So, especially being cartoons as well, sometimes you need to over accentuate something that you are saying so that it becomes a character. So now I'm a character instead of who I was before. Do you get what I mean? So there's a different technique there in being able to manipulate your vocal cords, you know. There were some cartoons that are coming back and some voice actors that are now getting work that wasn't getting work before, and they're able to get that work in games as well. So when there's an adaptation of a cartoon or a movie or so forth, the voice actors are getting their money as well, which is absolutely brilliant. And I think MultiVersus has done a very, very good job at allowing voice actors to get their roles in and to get things that they possibly wouldn't have had before. I do pay attention to voice actors in games because I do think it's an industry that I think is overlooked and also is very it's not, I wouldn't say well looked after. I just think it's sought after by the gamers, because voice lines become something that is really appreciated. I appreciate voice acting. If you can tell, I appreciate good voice acting, especially when you're playing a game and you have that immersion. So like if a character's looking at you but the lip sync is just words, I mean, I like reading, but it also then becomes something else entirely because you start to voice that character in your head as opposed to hearing that character's voice out loud. When we initially had our games coming up in the industry and being developed into a new modern gaming, there was a time where most games never had voice acting. There was sort of some that were just grunting and huffing and puffing in order to convey emotion, and then you would read everything else that's left. Good example of this is Zelda Ocarina of Time. Zelda Ocarina of Time, you will have a lot of grunting, screaming, like, and that's the way the character was conveying the emotion to you, other than what you're seeing on the screen. So there are some what's the word I'm looking for? There are some humorous play-ons of this that some games have done. For example, you have Fortnite has a very intelligent version of this, which is Peely. Peely is a mute, and Peely only sort of emotes what he's saying. He mimes and emotes what he's saying, which is really cool. It's a really cool character, and it's a way that you can, pay homage to the way gaming was initially. And also, it's actually it's not a gimmick. It's something that's like appreciated for character in context that does that. Like, it's like there's a lot there that you can unpack yourself when you're talking about how games evolved to then involve voice acting. It's like if I hear Ezio Auditore's voice, I know it's Ezio Auditore's voice. Like I wouldn't be able to mistake it. If Ezio Auditore was to come around and say, "What are you doing?" Like, I'm not going to do a good Ezio Auditore voiceover myself, but you get what I mean. When you hear that voice, like straight away, you're like, "Oh, that's Harley Quinn." Oh, no way. Like, do you get what I mean? So there's two different versions there, and also with a different adaptation, you might have a Harley in the movies that is slightly different to Harley in the cartoons, because you can be a lot more cartoony and it won't come across a bit strange when it's out of context in a game. So the fact that these are mainly cartoon characters in the game, which is the reason why you might not have LeBron, the basketball player, as opposed to a John Bentley who can over accentuate the details or the the sort of characteristics of LeBron James's voice, for example. So Harley Quinn, she has some signature styles in the game. She also has her signature outlooks in the games, or her outfits. So there's for the Harley Quinn fans, there's a few things there. Now, there is one move that I think that with her, I'm not going to talk too much about her moveset, but there is one move that's with her that can be used in a multiple different ways. It's her size special, like it can be used to get out of the way of attacks and so forth. But when I'm talking about that, you're going to have a disconnect. And the reason why you're going to have a disconnect is because you might not be playing with her right now. Right, so let's move on to the next character. One of the top favorites to begin with the first pre-release of MultiVersus, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is the one and only Bugs Bunny. Now, Bugs Bunny, it has been around for so long that you cannot know who Bugs Bunny is if you are or have watched cartoons. You know Bugs Bunny, and there is a younger audience that only knows Bugs Bunny from Space Jam 2, but most people that when they hear Bugs Bunny, they know who he is, and they know what he does, and they know that he's wacky, and they have an idea of a Bugs Bunny cartoon or where he's been in maybe Space Jam 1. Now, if you mention Space Jam 1 and you watch Space Jam 1 around that era, you know what Looney Tunes is. There's no way you don't know what Looney Tunes is if you were in the era of watching Space Jam 1. But whether it's Space Jam 2, this might be a slight disconnect because the way you are consuming your content or media is in different places, and you might not have consumed Looney Tunes cartoons growing up if you are that audience who was watching Space Jam 2 and first, introduced to Bugs Bunny. So there's a huge miss there, and there's some actual Bugs Bunny cartoons. If you watch it now, I mean, I've done it with an audience anyway. Like, I've actually done that with an audience. I've shown them Looney Tunes cartoons, and they sat and watched it and been captivated for hours. And that's because those type of cartoons with that slapstick comedy in that way, with that type of animation, do not exist anymore. And they are the best creme de la crop of that type of animation and that slapstick humor. If you Roadrunner, who isn't in the game yet, or I might add, Wile E. Coyote, those characters aren't in the game yet, but they could be in the game. We're going to get onto that in a moment, but there are some signature things about Bugs Bunny that he does have throughout the game. I think they've done a very good job with a well-rounded Bugs Bunny character. The only other Bugs Bunny character I can think of in a game is none, because I know I have played as Bugs Bunny in a game at some point, but they don't come up to mind in terms of gaming. So that goes to show you how well Bugs Bunny is done in MultiVersus. Now, there's not much to knock with him because his moveset is also quite solid. You can actually use combos with him. We'll get into combos a bit later on as well, and why I actually didn't make many more of those videos. There is a reason, and that is part of the reason for the player decline as well, and we will get into that. Now, up next is one of the most recent characters that have been added to the game, and that is Marvin the Martian. Now, I have not, and I repeat, I have not delved too deep into Marvin the Martian. I haven't done too much with him. Right, his rank at the moment is sort of non-applicable in 2-on-2, and 1-on-1. Right, it's sort of like Marvin the Martian is sort of, to me, he's always been a sort of like side character who just pops in to Looney Tunes every now and then and just comes out with a voice. Right, and he doesn't really, for me, is not like a huge standout character. Now, for his voiceover work, this character, like, if you hear Marvin the Martian's voice, you know it's Marvin the Martian. For his acting in the cartoon, top notch. In the game, I think there's some things that could be larger. I feel like it needs to be larger. With his moveset, it definitely needs to be larger. There is a problem with the tininess. Like, why are we playing it so small? Like, I feel like the developers, yes, he's an assassin's build, but he's vertical and he has like lasers, and I think for a beat 'em up game you need to see those lasers, and if it's too small, I'm like, why? The time where it makes sense for a laser to be small-ish would be how you've done Morty. So the way Morty interacts and the way he shoots lasers, sort of, not only does it make sense for his character, but you can understand why those lasers are the way they are, because they're not causing too much damage, and it's sort of like to sort of tap the damage onto you. It's not like a Superman jab. Superman jab is definitely damaging you. You're getting that damage up, and it also puts you in hit stun. But in terms of like those little tiny lasers that Marvin the Martian's using. I'm like, why are we so tiny? Why are we so tiny? Why are we not really showing off how big the laser is so we can see it coming, so we can adapt to it and do something about it, rather than it sort of sneaking up on you, right? And there's another character where that is there's a character that I feel has some really annoying traits that I'm going to touch on, and that's definitely part of the decline. I'm touching on it here, but there's a lot more to unpack. We're definitely going to get into the decline and why this game is declining and what pushed the player base away. Right, so moving on from Marvin the Martian, we have the next one that I was just touching on, and that is Stripe. I don't know what you were supposed to do about this dude's moveset. I'm sorry, but like, I don't know how you was like, the whole point in like when you're playing a beat 'em up game is you're not supposed to be constantly in a situation where you don't know how to defend yourself. You're supposed to be in a situation where you are able to, or if you're not able to, you know why. Right, so if you like for example, if you're playing like a Street Fighter or a Tekken and somebody does a super on you, right, I don't even need to see what I mean. You already know what I'm going to say. If someone does a super on you point blank, right, and it's a Ryu and it's a huge Metsu Shoryuken, or it's like a huge Hadouken, you know it's going to hit you, or you know you're going to have to block, or you know you're going to have to do something about this huge Hadouken that's flying towards your head point blank. You're like, bro, I'm going to have to either seriously block my heart out and seriously like hold that block as hard as possible, or I'm going to have to try and anticipate the move before it lands, because there's that slight moment in beat 'em up games where like a super's about to land and you have a chance to do something about it. You're like, oh yo, jump, duck, do something. And that's what gets you to, even in esports, that's what gets you watching, because when someone pulls it off, you're like, oh, yo, he pulled it off, he moved out the way, or, oh, yo, he managed to pull that really hard move off, which is really hard to hit. That, in translation, with Stripe, is gone, because he has some move, bro, where it feels like the bullet's inside you and you're being shot by it. I'm like, how, what, why? And that moveset seems to be able to be used in any scenario. It's like, why are you making the character do that? You know, like, it's like he's shooting. I don't even know if he's shooting the bullets or if he's actually shooting the character or what. It feels like the targeting system and what Stripe is in MultiVersus is a problem. He feels like a problem. It feels like, why are you hurt? Like it feels like it's like why are you able to do that? Why is your character moveset like that? And another character that had this issue, but it was more of a design flaw, was a character that is actually, I've already gone over, and that is Taz. Now Taz had an unfinished move. There was a problem with his moveset in the pre-release and in the first season, or just about in the first season before a patch. There was a huge problem with Taz, and that was that he could just infinitely spin, and you could not avoid this spin, bro. Like it was a spin move that Taz had, and he was spinning, and it was just like, if you even was in the vacuum of this spin, bro, you were done. And if you were up against two Tazes at one time, they would just spin, and they would spin, and you'd be knocked off the arena. 2, 3, 4, you're done. And it was like there was no way to avoid it. Now, when that happens and those issues, and we were letting Player First Games know, and we were letting Tony know, who is, I think he's like the head of Player First Games and the creation of MultiVersus, is in charge of all of it, I think. Head honcho over there. I think that goes to show, like, obviously with free-to-play games anyway, or with game releases of the modern era, that's something that is, like, it's a common ground. Like, that isn't the issue of the decline, right? Because when players are voicing these things, it also gives us a chance to have that communication with developers, and we do appreciate that. Like, when we're able to say, hey, look, the game's broken in this way here, can we fix that? But there is also a huge problem with that, because what tends to happen is there are those gamers, and you know who you are, that complain about things that are completely fair and do make sense, and it's not a bug and it's not a design flaw. There are some gamers that complain about things like that, right? Here's a example of where it's actually fair. Now, LeBron James, in the early esports days, I think it was Evo, because I was watching Evo as well. I didn't share it on my channel, or maybe I should have. But when we were watching Evo, there was specifically a rule that was in place that you could not use, because it was when LeBron James was released, you could not use LeBron James in that competition. You could, at that point in time, the MultiVersus developers and Player First Games decided that you could not use LeBron James at that point in time for that competition in the game. Now, I completely understood why. And the reason why is because there was that issue with LeBron James in the game at the time. There was it's like an exploit, but it's like a bad exploit for the game, which makes it unplayable. Now, when there's an exploit that makes the game unplayable for other players, that they literally cannot play the game, and then people are exploiting that, not a loophole, but like an issue with the design, then yeah, you're going to be like, well, we can't compete fairly in this competition at this time using LeBron James because there was a problem with the basketball. And it's like, when that happens, it's completely understandable, because it's like, it's a design flaw, there's an issue with the game because of it. These esports gamers, they have their fans that are also watching, and they want it to be fair. You know, if the esports player that you're watching and supporting loses to an unfair exploit, you guarantee there's going to be an uproar where fans are like, look, MultiVersus, fix it up. So, as I was mentioning with the issue with this, now as I said, there's pros and cons to everything. A con to the issue, a con to the communication from specific gamers, as I'm going to say, it's specific gamers. It's not the entire player base, right? They're communicating with specific gamers that might be on one platform like Twitter. As you can tell, I'm just taking a sip because it's about to get a little bit juicy. Now, when you're talking to a specific player base on Twitter, that player base might be one-way inclined, right? Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it might be an indicator that there is an issue in the game with that character or that moveset or that move. But if you're not opening your ears to a broader spectrum of the player base, then you're missing the entire picture. So you need to really branch out with your secondary research and your primary research and make sure you're touching all the bases of your player base. Because if you're not, what's going to happen is the patches and the fixes that you make into the game are only going to satisfy a percentage of your player base. Now, it's subjective. Like, there are things that people complain about which could be in complete fairness, but also cause an issue for the majority of the player base. Now, what I think's happened as well is, unlike the Shaggy meme fantasy creation, that's what we call Shaggy in the game. People were calling him Ultra Instinct Shaggy. Even that, and what was really funny about that is he's not going Ultra Instinct, he's going Super Saiyan. But the fact that people are calling him Ultra Instinct Shaggy goes to show you that people that were non-Dragon Ball fans still appreciated what Shaggy was doing in the game, right? So it was like, that's a place, the place that you want to be. That's the place that you want to be in. Something that satisfies even the non-gamers because it's so good. Or even the people that are not fans of it. Now, that doesn't mean to go all the way to that extreme and go to start satisfying people that aren't gamers, because then what's going to happen is you're going to have people that also are just dropping from the game like flies. Right? You're going to have people that are dropping from the game like flies, bro. Right? You need to be in a sweet spot, and we'll get onto the sweet spots in a moment. You need to be in the sweet spot of satisfying the majority, but also having that little bit of sadistic nature in you, where there is a move that is causing players issues. Because when that happens, you get the satisfaction of being able to beat that character. and that should be like a boss character. When you're up against a boss character in game design, you already know there's going to be something about that boss that is going to annoy the living poopy doops out of you. And I can swear, because YouTube allows me to swear. So when this podcast is being shared on YouTube, I can swear. Just putting it out there. There's a new thing. But there is a sweet spot for this. There is definitely a sweet spot for this. Now, there's no difficulty when you're in the online arena of multiplayer gaming. There's no difficulty selection. So that's when Player First Games was like, okay, we've got no difficulty because you could be up against a matchmake in public games against this player base. So then skill-based matchmaking is what some designers see that as a solution to this. Player First Games was like, we're also going to introduce an arcade mode. I believe the arcade mode came too late. It came far too late. There are some people that don't even know that exists. Like, so most of the player base that left don't know there's an arcade mode in the game. If I'm going into the game and I'm looking at the new menu that has just been added, as a content creator who's created content for multiverses, let's say, without any allegiance on the side of what I'm creating, I've done it because I was enjoying the game, and the people that are also watching were also enjoying the game, and now we're having a dialogue because we enjoyed the game and we want the game to go back up to the position that in which it was, so we can continue to enjoy the game. That's the reason why this podcast is being done. This episode is because we want MultiVersus to be back up to the position of what we want it to be, in that good position, in a good, profitable position where players are joining the game, not leaving the game. Right? So that's the whole point in this right now. So yeah, that sweet spot is really important, and it's like it goes to, tests. Now we understand how the gaming industry is going. Now to test the game out, what developers are starting to do is, let's go free to play, let's put it out, and let's add patches later on to make the game improvements that need to be made, instead of hiring absolute megaton of game testers and so forth. I get that. You can also have your beta, which we did have. We had that beta. And there's something really big that I've got to talk about that beta right now, because I can't leave it out and I need to get it out. And I've been waiting to say this. And this is definitely one of the biggest issues. Not even the progression. We will be touching on the progression. But there's something really huge, a really, really huge problem with MultiVersus that it still faces, has not fixed, and not a lot of people have mentioned or spoken about. And that is, let me just mention this one thing, and it will spark something in the MultiVersus fans that are listening right now. Hula, Velma. What do I mean? What do I mean? Hula, Velma. Now, Hula Velma. My stomach just went really funny there. You probably heard that. Hula Velma is Velma in a hula dress, within context to her character, because in one of the Scooby-Doo movies, the Velma character literally wears a hula dress. I think it's Scooby-Doo 1. And people thought she was hot. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It's taken out of context when people think the skin's hot. But you do need a little bit of sauce in your game, right? So with that pushed aside, let's not talk about what that means. But people can find anything hot, by the way. It's out of context. So you can't censor like everything. you literally can't censor everything. If people are thirsty enough, they're gonna find something hot, right? So cool. But the thing is, and the point that I'm making about this is, with that said, Hula Velma, you cannot find her. If you wanted to purchase Hula Velma now, you can't. Now, I understand you have battle passes and so forth, which is absolutely sick, which is part of the enticement of purchasing a battle pass, because you can get those skins that you can't then get afterwards. You can actually you can have that exclusive skin. But Velma was in the beta. We had the beta. And I don't even think she was even in the Battle Pass. I don't think she was I don't think that Hula Velma was in the Battle Pass. But you can't find her. I tell you that now. If you want to try and purchase Hula Velma, you cannot. You might as well add Velma to the Daphne to the game instead. You might as well start adding Daphne, because there's not a lot of variation of. I mean, it is quite. I would say it's varied, but you've got Wonder Woman, Garnet, Velma, Harley Quinn, Araya Stark. Those are the women. So I think those are the females, let's say. I'm not sure if Garnet is non-binary. I don't know. She sounds female though. I'm going to go with she. And she pink. Right, so she maybe I'm just going to, that's the perception. But other than that, it's all dudes, isn't it? Right, so it's like when if the game's like for everybody, think about everybody. Do you know what I mean? So what I'm saying is, when a skin is exclusive, you need to make it clear that it's exclusive, and you also need to make it clear that that won't be like, if it's in the battle pass, then it needs to be kind of clear. And I think that was too early of a item cosmetic for it to be kind of locked off and vaulted. I feel like Hula Velma's, it's too early. Like, you're in the early stages of the game. If you look back on, like, the king of battle passes, or the queen of battle passes, the royalty of battle passes, you're talking Fortnite, right? In the early stages of Fortnite, I really need to get something to eat, as you can tell. In the early stages of Fortnite, the battle pass wasn't an issue. Do you get what I mean? The battle pass wasn't an issue. And if those skins or cosmetics were in the battle pass, you're not looking at it like, ooh, man. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, if you got your one good skin which is enticing people to come to the game in an early beta battle pass, it seriously seems to be an issue, because you then cannot get that cosmetic at all. So I don't know if it was in the battle pass or not, but I know that Hula Velma was very popular, and you cannot get that. You cannot get that skin now at all. If you were to go and look for it, and it was in the early stages, and we're in the let's say the gaming economy, we're in a point where skins are really a thing now, then you need to put some of your skins forward, or at least make a variant that makes sense, so that fans of Hula Velma will be able to buy a different skin. Do you get what I mean? So there's things there. There are some things to unpack there in terms of the availability. Not to mention, the progression in this game is like, whoa, what's going on? Right, so the progression in the game is like, I get you want people to play the game longer, and that's where the money is made. 100%, I get that. But for example, there's a thing right now where the best skin in the latest, let's call it the challenges, for example, in the challenges that are currently available, the best skin is Wonder Woman. Right, there's a pink Wonder Woman where she has some hearts floating up on her, and that's the best skin that everybody's going to want that's currently playing the game, right? That's it. But the way you get the skin is not through Gleamium, which is how you can buy them. For example, you can buy Night to Remember Batman, which is a pink Batman, right? But in terms of the one that everybody wants that you're going to put on top, which is the Wonder Woman, which I'm looking for now because I cannot find it in the challenges, it costs quite a lot of pink. It's not even available anymore. So they actually there's no way they've actually got rid of that already. It wasn't time. It really wasn't time. It's too early. It's gone too early. It's gone far too early. There's no way that's gone. And this is what I mean. Like, it's like the things that people want are going too early, and the things that people want from the Battle Pass are seriously hard to obtain. Like extremely hard to obtain. Like, as in, you are going to be playing without getting off it at all. You're not going to be able to take a break. Like, you're going to have to, I don't know what they've done is they've extended the season and started to give boosts to how much you can earn when playing towards the Battle Pass. We get that. That's cool. But not only are the skins that are most popular not in the Battle Pass, there are things that are advertised on the season that are not in the Battle Pass. For example, the flood screen that starts the game, there is an array of start skin that is not in the Battle Pass. You can't find it. It's not in the Battle Pass at all. It would make sense for the skin that you're advertising most on the front of the season to be in the Battle Pass. There seems to be a disconnect between what's being advertised and what's actually available. Now, at the moment, you can use 12,000 Gleamium to get a Valenti Neon Velma, which is the pink version of Velma. But that Wonder Woman skin, you can now not get. Like, you can't get it. Right? And it's like, when you open up the game, she's in your face. Like, she is the skin that you see when you open up the game. There is no way to currently purchase that version of of Wonder Woman. That's an issue. That's an issue that could be paid attention to if it was spoken about. It's just not spoken about. Like, something's being advertised that cannot be purchased. Now it goes to what happens is you get to the point where you're like, why are you advertising it if it cannot be purchased? All of the skins below that skin that is literally looking you in the face when you start the game. you start the game. You've got this Wonder Woman with the hearts and pink with the purple dress, just looking at you, talking to you, but you can't get it. Like, bro, what happened? Why is it like that? You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like that's a very good thing to do. It's like for example, with other games in its genre, the free-to-play games, what tends to happen is the main first skin that you advertise either seems to be the first thing that you get in the Battle Pass, or at least something that you can progress to in the Battle Pass, right? But the thing is, it's like a completely separate promotional thing that has been completely disconnected, and it leaves the game disjointed because you're looking at things and it's sort of like taunting you, like, haha, you can't get this, and it's like, well, everybody wants to go and get it. You probably might want to put that behind at least a paywall. It'd even make more sense if you put it behind a paywall. Just let people buy Gleamium so they could get it. That would make more sense. But earning it also feels really, really good. Like, as in terms of, like, actually playing the game to get it. Like, maybe you could make challenges earn the skin as opposed to points towards the Battle Pass that are really, really low. Like, because if you're going to have to spend so much time in the game in order to get those points towards the Battle Pass, you might as well just give enough an option in order to get the skin. Buy the Battle Pass, get the skin. Because when you buy a Battle Pass in other games, the first few things you get are skins. Now, when you go into the Battle Pass of MultiVersus right here, the first three things you get in is XP, a emoticon, and some toast. No, sorry, I'll go back. There are some skins. Right, so the first two things you get are two skins. So I apologise, got that wrong. No, actually, no, it's one skin, Astronaut Velma, which is advertised on the front of the game when you on the flood screen of the game, and then a Batman taunt. Now, it seems to be the Battle Pass is an issue for majority of people that play MultiVersus. It's not the main issue, but it is one of the issues that everybody is very vocal about, because it's a way that you can point out a huge gaping issue because it's really in your face. You can't miss the issue of the progression of the Battle Pass because it is a huge issue, and I think the developers have also taken note of that, which is the reason why they've then taken time, because I feel like they need to pay attention to that. Right, one of the huge disconnects is the Battle Pass, because you can play this game for hours on end, and still not even make a dent in the battle pass. Now you want to feel like, at least if you're playing the game for like a month straight, that you've made a dent in the battle pass. But it's disheartening for the gamer base to not feel like the progression is fair, and that's definitely an issue. And also the challenges points are just they're just not touching it. I haven't even unlocked premium for that reason, because there's also no subscription model for it. There's no subscription model for it as well. Can you put this in place? Yes, because you're available on cross platforms. So it means that when you're making purchases, you can make your purchases across your account. So there could be a way for you to get your subscription base. Maybe that could take the weight off you having to get that, get that bottom line money that you need to get in order to focus on other things in the game, or hire more developers maybe, or whatever it is internally that we need to help the game get back to its glory, because it has the potential to come back. Also, another huge gaping thing that I did also notice is that during the first release of the game, there was actually a storyline that was presented. There was a storyline in MultiVersus that looked very interesting, right? You'd launch up the game with the launch of the season. Batman was there in his Batcave. The multiverse opened. Batman was traveling the multiverse, I think he got pulled into one, and then the other characters started to make their appearance. Looked so cool. It was definitely one of the key points that we was all looking at, because it was like, is that character going to interact with this character? Not just with voice lines, which is great because you have voice lines interacting together. There was even content being created of people finding early releases of voice lines of characters interacting with each other, because these characters have never interacted with each other otherwise in a game or in any media property. And that was definitely one of the key points of MultiVersus. It wasn't even just the actual gameplay itself. There was another element where the storyline and how these characters would interact was happening, because there was an underlying storyline there, like there is with other Battle Royale or free-to-play games. There is an underlining story which is a pull of the game. We were looking at Batman in the Batcave and which type of Batman it was, where he was going, how Taz was interacting with Harley Quinn. People loved that. People absolutely loved how Taz was interacting with Harley Quinn. That was definitely, it was one of the key moments, and what actually incited people to pick the game up. They were like, so now when I do a team up between Taz and Harley Quinn, they will have a few voice lines like that. No, they won't, because they missed the mark with that a little bit. That mark has been missed. There was a huge opportunity there in order to capitalize on that again. Maybe take a little bit more time and be like, season 2, you're going to get an opening cinematic. Even if it was just one opening cinematic, it would have helped. It would have definitely helped, because that carries you throughout the whole season. That can carry you throughout the whole season. Fortnite used to focus a lot on the live events. That's the reason why, because it carried throughout the whole season. So when you were playing the game and you were seeing the new map, in these terms, it would be new arenas, new platforms. There was a storyline behind it. You knew, remember when Taz interacted with Harley Quinn on this stage and they first came here? So now I'm playing it and there's that storyline. Now I can make up the story. I can carry on the story in my head. And then maybe in the new season, we find out some more on that story. As opposed to the one cinematic that we got for the launch of the first season and it just stopped. So it was like, that is also missing as well. So the initial pull of MultiVersus is that, but it didn't come back. It did not come back. It was there. And we had a long sort of playthrough where we got all this context of which I'm breaking down in this video, in this podcast. And then it just stopped. It just ended. It was just like that, rather than think or capitalize further on it, or MultiVersus going into that again, it didn't go back into it. Now that's something that is completely overlooked and is completely not focused on in terms of this game, which leaves it empty. It leaves it as an empty game, which it doesn't need to be. And I feel like maybe shareholders could really have a look at that as to what that could be, because that could have so much involved into it. Because the shareholders can look at it and be like, that opening cinematic is gonna not only revitalize franchises that haven't been looked at for a long time, which we still have our rights to and can still use and create more to, but it's also going to remind people, hey yo, Cartoon Network, the goats of this cartoon here. Do you remember this cartoon? Oh yeah, I do. Oh yeah, I'm playing with Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory. That could also be in the game. Dee Dum. You got Dee. What's the other guy? Yo, Powerpuff Girls coming to MultiVersus. Could you imagine the Powerpuff Girls coming to MultiVersus? How would you put them in the game? Would they be like 3 separate characters? Bubblegum. Imagine you have this Professor X just walk up on the thing. This was the excitement of what we were feeling when MultiVersus was launched. It was part of the reason why it was so big, because it wasn't a Smash Bros knockoff. It was its own thing, and it was doing it well. Even with the bugs and the issues like what I've mentioned, for example, Taz, which is agreed by the developers, it was an issue and it was fixed. But completely nerfing a character into the ground is not the way to make a solution for it. Some move sets that we were really used to using are completely disjointed now. You know, I stopped making combo videos because there's some characters you can just not combo with. It's disjointed. There's no flow. Like you like some characters, you hit stop, make it one combo, stop. Like there's one move set you can do and you can't follow up. Early on, there were some characters you could do that with. You could follow up. I used a really intelligent way of using Bugs Bunny's rockets by shooting it up in the air, finding I can make a burrow underneath, then it comes out the other side. But there's not many other characters that have that care and attention paid to it. As it like that level, like that's what that is that's something that's been placed there, and then when it's well made, us gamers will find ways to do things like that. But there's the flow of what should be there for a platform beat 'em up, like how it was going, a sort of backtracked, because there's been some things that have been nerfed that have really put players off. Like knocking someone off the arena. I can't express how good it used to feel to knock somebody off the arena and the power that was pulled into it. For example, I made an entire video about Wonder Woman and her perks, and there's one move that when you used it, it felt really good. It still, if you pull it off, feels really good, but there's sort of a nerf to it. It's been softened. There's no reason for a punch to be soft in a beat-em-up game. It feels softer. There's something that's been nerfed in the game where the feeling is off, and it's something to do with the hitboxes. It's like when you punch with Superman, you can still feel that. Like that can still be felt, and that's because it's a combo punch, and there's a solidness behind it. But some of that solidness has been nerfed, and I don't know why. It's like when hit points were high to a certain point, and you were knocking someone, they were gone. It doesn't matter about the knockback influence that was in the game. There were some moves that if you'd done it and the points were high, the knockback points were high, they were gone, bro. No, that has been nerfed. Like, I don't know, it's something to do with, not to do with the bounce, but the knockback has been nerfed. I feel like that needs to come back. That needs to come back also to bring the game back. Because regardless of some moves being absolute, like, impossible to dodge, like what I've mentioned with the stripe thing, you can't anticipate what he's doing. Like, you can't anticipate what that character's doing. Some of the lasers, again, too small. Right, you need to have the ability to be like, yo, he just done that move, so I understand what's going on. Not there's bullets inside my body somewhere, and I'm just getting hit with it. Like, what's going on? Like, if you're gonna do that, you need to do that really well, and it needs to be something like, let me see if there's an actual example. Like for example, Akuma. When you use Akuma, and it's a really bad example, but there are some move sets where something's inside the beat 'em up character, and then somebody can press a button to activate something. Now, with MultiVersus being of a faster pace, not only does it really feel jarring with something like that, it still feels like soft and unfair, because you're having a knockback in any position. Like, so how do you anticipate that? You can't. There's no anticipating it. There's no way you can be like, oh, yo, Stripe just shot me with the thing. Like, you can't even see it. you cannot see it. So the feeling of the game in terms of combos and in terms of the hitboxes, for that damage to feel like it's actually really impacting, with the knockback also being nerfed, the knockback is just not. It's just not what it was. Right, I remember bouncing around that arena, and I was like, "Yo, what's going on?" Or if someone done a knockback upwards using an attack, I was like, and you would feel that. You would feel that. Some of the spikes downwards as well, you would feel that. It's been nerfed, and it's soft. It feels softer, and the reason why that's really jarring is because when a player is able to move at a faster pace, why is it when the knockback isn't higher, you're not being knocked back faster? Because what's happening is you're being knocked back, and then characters have like no knockback, and then they are moving at a pace which is faster than the knockback that you've just received. So it's like the game becomes more of the hitbox doesn't mean much when you actually land a punch in the correct hitbox. It's just soft. it just feels softer, and it's being nerfed in a way where it's like, yo, I've just hit that person and they're at 200 damage points, and I've hit them up with a spike attack. They should be going up, and they're still influencing the knockback in a way that's like, that did nothing. And you're like, what? So definitely the game is a lot softer than it was previously, which I do think needs some attention paid to it, because it's far too soft compared to what it was. That cinematic that I feel definitely pulled a lot of the players in has gone, because with that as well, as I said, it carries on for the rest of the season. The progression for the battle pass is just difficult. It's at a point where it's not even, if you finish the battle pass, it's just, you don't feel like you've actually, I haven't finished it for a long time. I stopped. Like, you don't have the incentive to do it either. Like, the incentive's not there to complete that. All right. And these are the things that need to be spoken about, because these are the reasons why there was a decline in the player base. Now we need to go back into the characters here, because we're not done. There is another character which I think they did miss the mark with this character a lot, and that's because the character initially wasn't as popular as it is now, and that is Black Adam. Now Black Adam as a character, as you know, wasn't at the forefront of DC, but that's part of how MultiVersus can be good, because it can revitalize these characters, and it can bring back the original audience of these characters, and also bring new eyes to these characters, right? Which is what makes what gaming can do, and what MultiVersus is capable of doing, right? Just revitalizing a franchise to the point where you want to see a new movie of it. Which goes on to my point. When Black Adam was announced, the Black Adam that we thought we were going to get initially was The Rock. The Rock's version of Black Adam, because that's the Black Adam that was out at the time. The movie was out. Fortnite done this well, so Fortnite capitalized on it. But then MultiVersus decided to go in a completely different direction and go to the comic adaptation. Now, I understand that, like, if you're going for the comic adaptation initially anyway, that makes sense. But the Rock's version just wasn't available. it just wasn't available. It's like the movie's out now. The thing we were, so everybody's expecting it. And it actually took that long for it to be released that everyone just kind of just went, you know what? We're out, bro. Like we were going to play with that character, but it just took so long. And then it was behind the paywall, but it came after the player's release. Right, so Black Adam was released, but the release of the Rock's version of Black Adam wasn't released until like way down the line. So then already what you've done is you've lost players, because then they've thought, oh, there's only that version of Black Adam. Well, if I want to go and get the Rock's version of Black Adam, I'm going to go elsewhere because it's not in the game that is literally a Warner Brothers game, which is focusing on a multiverse part of what it is. You know how big that is? That's literally like, right now, in DC and Warner Bros., Elseworlds has been announced and things like that. So there's a huge opportunity in MultiVersus to be like, okay, we don't yet have a game for this character. Here you go. Huge opportunity, colossal opportunity, like massive opportunity. But the way it's being executed, there are some disjointed, missing components there that people expect from these types of games. Like, it's now an expectation. It's a high bar, yes. There might be some things that need to be done behind closed doors, yes, and behind the scenes. But if you haven't, like, to me, it's like, well, that's the reason why leaks are also damaging, and also why you should just not announce certain things yet if it's not even in the books. If it's not in the books, then you probably shouldn't do that, because then people are expecting it. And when you do that like months later, it's like, oh, well, I've already gone. I mean, it can bring players back. So there might have been players that come back, but that expectation for it initially in the first place is going to damage because you haven't got it. If you haven't done it, but it's been announced, and then you do it without the thing that you said that you were going to do it with, then you're missing that component as well. Like you've complete, like it makes players distrust what's going to come next, because it's like, if you say that Starfire is coming next and you give a Teen Titan version of Starfire, then we're going to expect this Teen Titans version of Starfire. But then if you put like a different comic version of her and then put Starfire months down the line in the item shop, well, you know what's going to happen there, don't you? Well, so combos are disjointed in the game, that I feel like definitely that would be such a long-term fix for the game though, because it's like, is it the style that you're going for with the game? Because combos are a huge part of beat 'em up games. You can combo with a beat 'em up game no matter how the moveset is laid out. No matter how the moveset is, players will always find a way to create combos. But with that said, I feel that the moves that have been chosen for certain characters make it extremely difficult for you to combo, because it's like the types of combos are always sort of it's like fast tapping. It's like fast tapping. It's like a mashing rather than any flow with your joystick. There's not too much flow with joystick. As I said, there are some beat 'em up games you can play on D-pad and joystick, but I feel like MultiVersus pushes you to one or the other. If you were playing MultiVersus on controller and not on keyboard, keep in mind it's a cross-platform free-to-play game. If you're playing on controller, you either play joystick or D-pad. You do not flow from one or the other or decide, this matchup I'm going to try joystick. You choose one or the other, and that's because not because of out of choice. That's because of how you need to play the game. Like, it's the confinements of the game. Not because it forces you, but because if you want to win and you are mashing your buttons in the way that you are in this beat 'em up game that can be high paced, you haven't got time to be like, yo, let me use joystick instead. And also with the move sets that you've got, that's the way it's laid out. It's forward X, not down up X. There's no down up X. Like, it's just not a thing. Like, that's what helps you to combo sometimes. Creating a Hadouken and then going for a Shoryuken, which isn't really a combo. You get my point. Or Shoryuken, Hadouken. Do you get what I mean? That flow is quite difficult to do in MultiVersus because there's a pause. There's a pause there. And the combos are based in the move itself, as opposed to being able to chain an attack. Being able to chain an attack in MultiVersus is disjointed. You can barely chain. What happens is move. What happened is move, attack, move, attack, move, attack. Rather than move into position, try a flow, that attack's going to move me forward, do it that way, boom, boom, boom. And the reason why it might be like that as well is because of how some characters are. For example, there are some moves that move you, and holding it down is going to move you across the platform. For example, Superman, he has a grab attack, which if you fly with him, you're moving, like, and that is quite an intelligent way to do MultiVersus, yes. But if you're going to do that and you're going to completely take combos out of the picture, you need to, make sure that it's executed in a way which is fluent, but also fair. I don't know if fair is the word, but it needs to be in a way where it's the balancing makes sense in a way that it can be perceived by the attacker and the defender. But as I said, there are some things that some players are doing, or some characters do, that just don't make sense to this. So that's the way combos work in MultiVersus, in the way that it does, and that's the way they've decided to create the game and push the game into that direction. But it does create some gaping issues and positions that you can be put in that seem to feel like exploits. And that's why people are like, nerf this move, nerf that move, nerf that move, nerf this, nerf the whole character. Because that's what's happened. Well, what's happened is the characters having these slamming hard attacks, these heavy waning attacks. As if you're a tank player, for example, if you play a tank character, these heavy waning attacks have been nerfed, so it feels too soft. Right? All these powerful, strong assassin finishers have been nerfed, so it doesn't feel as strong. It's like, I'm going to play a game of MultiVersus after this, and I'm going to be a rare Stark, and I'm going to try and get off some knockback. Because the assassins, just their knockbacks have been, they've been gone. Honestly, the assassin build characters, their knockbacks have been gone. Mages are still there, but also the knockback has also been nerfed on that. So it's like, where are you going to go with the direction of MultiVersus in that point? I think I've really pointed out a lot of the issues and the reason for these declines without mentioning the other issue. So the other issue is from types of players. Right, so there are types of players in this player base that tend to grieve players a lot, but there are workarounds of blocking a griever. Now, what is grieving? Grieving is when a specific group of players or a specific player sort of harasses another player and is normally using a Smurf account, so they're quite good at the game, or there might be a high-level player in the game, or they are normally quite good at the game, or they're using exploits or hacking in the game, and they normally grieve a player out of the game. That has happened so much in MultiVersus. Grieving has been a huge issue in MultiVersus, and it makes people put the game down. because there is a workaround that some players have been using in MultiVersus to continue to grieve other players and harass other players. And these players might have been content creators. Again, it's hurting the game, because what happens is those content creators just stop creating because they can't even make content in the game because the grieving doesn't stop. So you don't even get room to breathe. And normally these hackers that tend to do this are using hacks. So you get in players that got 400 damage and they're not even being bounced. You know, bro. So technically, what's the point? Because you can't win. Then that was an issue earlier on. And it's obviously, when there's a huge player base, it's hard to stop this. It's hard to cap it. It's hard to contain it, because there might be quite a lot of people that are doing that. So that is an issue, and I'm glad there are things in the game to try and sort that out. The content issue itself comes from things like not enough stages and things like that. Now, the ranked mode is put in. The reason why players pay attention to ranked mode as an issue for the game is because if all players are put into one type of game set or queue or type of the game, what tends to happen is it gets like overcrowded, because you have, and it can get really annoying because you might have a lot of pro players that are playing with the wrong set of players constantly, if that makes sense. So there are pro players that want to progress and they want to use the game as part of their career. And there's no opportunity to do that if there's no ranked mode. We get that, but if you've probably already noticed, there is a ranked mode, but there's still an issue because players are still leaving the game. It's not just about being a pro, it's also about the matchmaking. So the matchmaking issue. But then the matchmaking issue might come from, actually, there are a lot of grievers and in the game, and harassment in the game that might be causing the issue of players actually leaving because they think the player's good. But what's happening is they're actually using some sort of hack or something, and you're getting people with crazy amount of damage numbers that aren't getting knocked off the arena. Now, the regular player base probably won't even pay attention to it. What they would do is just leave the game. And that's what happens. That's what happens. Because it's really exposed when you can see it, and you can see it. You can see when somebody's cheating, because if they've got like a, and you're knocking them back with like a crazy knockback hit and they aren't moving, you're like, the person's cheating, but what are you gonna do about it? Then when you can't do anything about it, you leave the game. So that was also a huge issue for MultiVersus as well. And part of the decline. It's also another issue for part of the decline. Now, MultiVersus could capitalise and get back to its former glory. Maybe like with the start of seasons, because what tends to happen with free-to-play games is the start of the season can pop off, and then it can slowly decline before the next start of the season. That can happen. That's a thing that's regular, and that's the way you sort of build back up. That does happen. So you do need to keep that in mind as well, that a game naturally has a decline. Like I would say a game naturally has resulted in natural declines over time, as far as we know, to this point in time. So that's how games have sort of, the pattern that has been showing with certain new games. It was in another reason why it was a success is because when it was released, there's no other beat 'em up platform gamer that is cross-platform with the character design like in which it has here in MultiVersus. There's certain characters that are not available in the others. Brawlhalla does not have Batman, as far as I'm aware. And there's definitely some characters and properties that we thought were coming to the game. So For example, we were talking about various Cartoon Network characters we thought were coming to the game. Just we were theorizing about that sort of thing. Like there was a lot of theories of, Johnny Bravo. You got Warner Brothers, so then you've got Lord of the Rings. You've got Samurai Jack, Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory, and the list goes on. There's so much that could be added to MultiVersus. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous, the pool of characters that could be selected here. You got a Dakotaverse, you could have Static Shock. Especially at a time where a competitive studio is using a character with similar traits like that. There's so much there. Like when a movie comes out, Fortnite does this really well for a segue of advertisement. When a movie is going to come out, they start to use the character skins for that movie. Let's go. That's a huge segue for, that movie's out, isn't it? Yeah, man, I got the skin in the game. Let's go. Now I can come back and I can continue to enjoy the fantasy of that movie in a game because I can use it here in the game. That's also a part of the appeal of using multiple skins from franchises in a game. Huge point, huge plot point. That, again, this could have been done very well with Black Adam at that point in time. It could have been done very well. It could have, MultiVersus was in the position to be the ones to do that. The Flash is out soon. The variation on Batman that you can involve because Batman has been revealed in the trailers. It would be the time to let's segue. So let's segue now. So now you can use that version of Batman. I mean, there's the animated version of Batman, but what about if you just now, right at this point in time, used Michael Keaton's Batman as a skin in MultiVersus? I mean, it's there, isn't it? Like, if Superwoman was now just placed into the game, I mean, there's different versions of Superwoman, isn't it? Supergirl and Superwoman, different versions. Superboy, Teen Titans, and Beast Boy. Like, there's been a gap for Teen Titans. I'll tell you that now. There's a Teen Titans game, but it isn't at the level in which MultiVersus is at. If MultiVersus was to now be like, yo, we put in all the Teen Titans in the Battle Pass, it'd be like, what? That straight away would bring so many players back to the game if they was just like, look, we're putting all the Teen Titans in the Battle Pass. Straight away, people would be like, yo, let's go. That audience there that watches Teen Titans, woo, they'd be straight on it. But there is a lot more that could also be added that could do that. There's so much that could do that. But the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the faith, the player faith that they had in MultiVersus to be able to deliver that is just, that's why players are saying that there's not enough content in the game. That's what is meant by that, because it's like what we thought MultiVersus could be or still could be hasn't been capitalized on yet. Now, that's not to disrespect the characters that are already in the game. You got some good characters that are in the game. Did I ever think that Gizmo would be there? No. Am I playing as Gizmo when I can? Yes. Does he have the elements of what he does have from the movies? Yes. But you also need to pad that out with what is also coming as well. Yes, you can revitalize some franchises, but in terms of the franchises that are being used right now in MultiVersus, the only ones that are being used right now is they're not really there. I mean, you've got like House of the Dragon, which is also a thing, but I'm not sure if Arya Stark's in that. As I said, I don't watch Game of Thrones. But in terms of properties that are being used right now, you've got Rick and Morty. I think there might be a new season of Rick and Morty, maybe. Adventure Time. And Bugs isn't being consumed as much. Looney Tunes isn't being consumed as much as it previously was, which is a revitalization for that character in terms of putting more eyes on the character. But then it's like all the new properties that could be added. It just seems like there's missing gaps there. You know, and it does benefit. It will benefit, those franchises will benefit. There might be a reason why those deals haven't been capitalized on yet. But when you're talking Warner Bros., there's so much more that can be added here that it's just like, you could like, even if you were to do the polarizing thing and be like, add the new Velma, like that would get people talking about MultiVersus again, let alone playing the game. Just out of like controversy. If you were to get into that, I wouldn't say desperate, but if you were to get to that point where you wanted, you know, controversy in the game, that would do it. Because you know what, I reckon people would play as those characters if they were in the game. It's a beat 'em up game, so there's multiple reasons why. You know, so it's like there's that to unpack as well. You could literally be like, oh, that polarizing character from that show right there that managed to get a second season. Imagine if you could beat on the character in a beat 'em up game. That's exactly my point. You'd want to. There's a reason why you have villains in a game. There's a reason why you have villains in a story. I mean, where are the villains in the game? There's actually no villains in the... Like, if you go through MultiVersus right now, I'm going up here. Just need to plug my phone in as well while we're having this conversation, so bear with me a second. If you're going through the player base, the characters that are available in MultiVersus right now, they're not really any villains. And there are some captivating villains in Warner Bros. Properties. Penguin, just to name one. Imagine Penguin had his umbrella and he's like flying around the platform and doing stuff. He'd be like, yo. I mean, for the thumbnail of this episode, I might just place a character that everybody wants in the thumbnail. And place that there and be like, why not? that might be the thumbnail to this podcast. It's going to be a character that should be in the game, and I'm going to point to it with an arrow, saying, why not? And that's just to make my point there of. People would want that. People want that. That's what they're expecting. That's the love and care and attention to these characters. Now, we love all the characters that are being placed in the game. There are some things that haven't been executed well. Like I said, Stripe's moveset is like, why? Like, you still have to think about how the game plays. Like, not just about the characters themselves, but it's how the game plays and how the game feels and what's going on with the player base. We can't ignore what's going on with the player base. They are speaking in drones by not playing the game. The whole point is people aren't playing because they feel and we feel this way, and the more conversation we have about it, the more likely it is that it's going to get fixed. So we need to have these conversations for the majority of the gamers that have left the game, because this is part of the reason why. Now, the prices of Gleamium, I've spoken about the prices of Gleamium in a live stream. You can see me talking about the prices of Gleamium. Now, I'm going to go into the prices of Gleamium now to give you an idea of the price here of Gleamium, but it's not actually the prices that are the issue, and I'll say why in a moment. Right, so Gleamium, the prices aren't actually too harsh. There is some that could come down. I mean, like 6,000 Gleamium is like, whoa. Right, so, you know, again, it wouldn't be an issue if the things in the game were, you know, to a measure, if it measured up in terms of the gameplay itself, because without the gameplay itself being what it was to a point of satisfaction for the majority of the gamers, then things are going to happen. Or even a challenge that can be achieved at all, right? So here we are. So 450 Gleamium is £3.99, Great British pounds. 1000 Gleamium is £7.99. 2200 Gleamium is £15.99, and 6000 Gleamium is £39.99. So if you put that in mind, right, the season battle pass, if you were trying to unlock the season battle pass now, it is 950 Gleamium. So with that in mind, you would have to spend £7.99 for that, which is actually a cheap price for the battle pass. For a battle pass, that is a cheap price. The problem is not the battle pass and the price of the battle pass. The problem is the progression in the battle pass, because £7.99 is a good price for a battle pass, without a doubt. I like that price. I'm sure you do too. It's £8. You can spend more at McDonald's, easy, on like one meal. You can definitely spend more than that at KFC for one meal. Easy. But in terms of MultiVersus, it just doesn't. It's the reason why people aren't spending that is because of the progression. Now, there's a large amount of gamers right now. There is a large number. There are millions of gamers that join games specifically for the battle pass, because even when they're not winning, they're able to get that progression through and earn something for it. They're able to earn something in the game for playing the game, even if it's not like anything that goes to a higher level. For example, any career earnings. The majority of gamers would still be able to get something out of it, right? And that's lost because they're not getting that out of it. And then when you go through the free version, of course, the free version's not going to be as good as what's in the battle pass. And even if the things aren't worthwhile for the gamers in the battle pass, then they're not going to do it, and you're going to lose players. Because what's going to happen is, you're going to use that to measure the game. Those people that are into that specifically are going to use that to measure the game. What tends to happen as well with high prestigious games that do this very well is you literally can completely make content on those specific items from the battle pass. You can literally make content on the battle pass, right? So if you can't do that, if content creators can't do that and are not doing that, that is an indicator that there is something wrong with the battle pass of the game. Because if content creators are like, I'm not going to make a video about the battle pass in this game, what that means is there's something wrong with the battle pass. It's not worth it yet. It's not worth it to the majority of the players. And there are a lot of players, millions of players, that join live service games like this for the battle pass. Other times it's game modes. Like, for example, Halo Infinite, it was game modes. There were game modes that were available in previous Halo games that weren't available in 343's new Halo Infinite multiplayer mode. And a lot of people were playing that game specifically for multiplayer, which is the reason why there was multiplayer and there was story mode. But what tends to happen nowadays with a massive multiplayer online game, live service game like MultiVersus, is there is usually an underlying storyline that goes along with it. And when there isn't, what happens is a lot of players won't be interested, because that's the standard that has been set by the other games of its type of genre, of the free-to-play games, of the live service ongoing games. There was an underlying story. The top most high-played Final Fantasy online game is, Final Fantasy 14? What's the name of the game? Just going to double-check it. I think it's like the most played online ongoing game. It probably saw it at the Game Awards. So I'm going to quickly search for that. But while I'm searching for that, what we're going to talk about as well is, I think it's Final Fantasy Online. Final Fantasy Online, I think, is the name of the game. I'm just going to quickly search it now. Right, so it's Final Fantasy 16 online. Is that the one? Not 100% sure. It's Roman numerals, isn't it? But that game is absolutely huge, right? And it's because Final Fantasy's storytelling is so well done. There is a huge care and attention that is paid to the storyline alone in terms of that game. It's what makes that game more special. It's special anyway. Final Fantasy has always been a special game. It's always been a huge developer effort behind that. And as an online game, that is absolutely massive. I'm going to see if it's actually available in the Xbox store right now. Just going to have a look to see if it's available in the Xbox store right now. Just to have a look at some of the reviews, to read out some of the reviews. Because what I'm also going to do is I'm going to read out the reviews of MultiVersus. I mean, right now there's a new game that has just been released, or should be released, and it's called DC's Justice League Cosmic Chaos. Right, it's optimized for Xbox Series S. Right, it's not long been released. It's been released on the 10th of March 2023. And when we look at their reviews, right, keep in mind that this is not even in the genre and it's a paid for game. There's only one review right now that has 14 thumbs up. And it says, if you loved Super Friends in the 70s, 80s, you'll love this. Despite the cartoony models and being aimed at kids, there are plenty cheeky nods to adults with the surprisingly well-written story. Mr. Misplitlik, I think his name is, may be a bit of a silly villain, but he's actually used brilliantly here. Once again, we're talking about the villains. This is the only review on this game so far, and it's already hitting on all of the points that I've just spoken about in this video. We're not done with reading this review yet. There's a surprisingly level of depth and attention to detail with the town and game world. You play as DC Trinity of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, who are all amusing caricatures of their comic book selves. So even with focusing on the comic book characters, you know what the identity is in terms of what it is. Now, MultiVersus in nature is a multiverse, so you can venture out into different things, right? The game is really good fun and excellent writing, entertaining, slowly expands combat and powers with plenty to do and collect. If you think it looks like a mobile game, it is much deeper than that and will pleasantly surprise you. Couch co-op is great, but it loses a star for lack of online play in 2023. No microtransactions to speak of, and the publisher and devs should be praised for this. That is the only review on that game right now. It's written in depth and it touches on every single one of the points that I've mentioned in this podcast so far. In this podcast episode, everything that I've just mentioned has been mentioned in that one review of that DC game right there. People love DC, but we love the stories of DC as well. Story over everything is one of the top things that Tom Gunn said when he is it top? Did I just say Top Gun? I think I did. But in the announcement for the new DC movies, that was one of the top things that was mentioned. Story over everything when it comes to the stories of the movies. It's the same with games as well. Games don't miss out. There needs to be some story. If you're going to lean on the stories that have been put into the game already, that have been put into the storyline already, yeah, fine. But you need to sort of, you've put the emphasis on that slight cinematic in the initial push, which is why people were also playing the game. We love the characters and the story of the characters. So you could do that in MultiVersus, and what we thought it was going to be initially, and what the whole player base thought it was initially going to be, is that the characters even at least interacting that usually wouldn't interact. And that is, the Smash Bros games, for them, it was definitely the trailers that played a huge part. Because you would have like at least that little interaction between some of them. I know that because I've seen the trailers and not played the game as much. I think I touched the game like decades back. But I know that when the trailer comes out, I'm watching that. Because it's part of what carries the game. I feel like MultiVersus have missed that opportunity. Could capitalise on it, come back, make a huge comeback with things like that. I think it would make an absolutely huge comeback with things like that. The storyline could be leaned on so heavily and could build so much of the lore of MultiVersus and what it is and what it delivers. Because it does deliver a lot. I mean, I'm going to search Final Fantasy Online right now because it is one of the, praised massive multiplayer online games that is played today. So it's important to keep track on what the bar is set, what bar is set for the industry. Right, so is this Final Fantasy 16, by the way? I was like, what? Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy. I'm like, which one was this one? Okay, there's a new thing right there with the season pass. I'm like, okay. But there's a new Final Fantasy game coming out soon. There's also, if I click on this, it's the demo. I'm going to click to get that. You just listening to me download that as well. That's something that I'll just casually. That was released a couple of days ago. The demo was. I'm like, okay, no one's talking about that, so obviously I'm gonna share that with you guys so you can have a look at that. That's new. But yes, MultiVersus, we do hope it gets back on track. I do feel that these are the things that are really going against the game. The disjointed flow of combat definitely needs paid attention to. The reason why I feel it's also more disjointed than it used to be is that knockback, the flow of combat is sort of missing. It's there's a lot of mashing, but the flow is just off. It's just off. It feels broken with some characters. That not the hitboxes, although there's some fine tuning that has been fixing that, it still requires a bit of work. I do feel these are the main issues. Do let me know what you think MultiVersus needs to do in order to win back its player base, because early on it was so good. There was a lot going on with it, man. It felt good that but as it progressed, these are the pitfalls that it's falling into that I feel aren't being spoken about in depth, that need it. What do you think? It's important to know what you guys think as well that are listening here today. What do you think that MultiVersus needs in order to improve to the point of being back? It definitely doesn't deserve to be. Well, what's happened has happened. With the initial effort, it doesn't deserve to be struggling like the way it is now. It can come back, and I feel like these are the things that need to be focused on to bring that game back up to glory. MultiVersus can definitely make a comeback. It has that rich, honest, like the rich heritage of DC characters behind it. It has everything I feel it needs in terms of the branding behind it, but these are the issues that are affecting the game that I've spoken about here. There's been whispers that Samurai Jack might be added. I don't think that will be enough at this point. Yes, it would be good. Samurai Jack being added will be good. I don't think you should just add just the one, because Samurai Jack doesn't have too many variations, and the variations that he does have are completely different. Like there's a chicken version of Samurai Jack. How are you going to do that? It'd be a completely different character. Where he's literally a fighting chicken, and so that's going to be a completely different type of character, isn't it? There is obviously with smaller characters, there's I wouldn't say an issue with that, but I would say there are characters that can be added, definitely 100%, especially those Cartoon Network characters that are of the smaller stature. I mean, definitely could be added. We probably need more villains in the game, and there needs to be some villain shake up. There needs to be something that shakes up the character base and pushes them and makes it more of like that motivation behind the character of why the character is in the game. Give the heroes the voice lines that react to that. You know, you could literally add one villain that makes it like, yo, Haku from Samurai Jack is in MultiVersus, causing an issue, and he's destroying the platforms, so that when you get onto round 4 or knockdown 4, the platform starts to shake because Haku is there, and Haku has his announcer pack where he tries to take down the multiverse. Do you get what I mean? So it becomes something else entirely. Then they're interacting. The announcer pack could interact with that. You could have a special announcer pack for the villain that is taking over MultiVersus. Think about that. That completely shakes up the game, where Haku is literally like, "Ha, you got a knockout. That's nothing." Like, you know what I mean? Shang Tsung versus Haku, bro. Shang Tsung versus Haku. You've already got Mortal Kombat characters in another version of these types of games. You got like Scorpion in Brawlhalla. So there's no reason why you can't have Scorpion in MultiVersus. There's no, I don't see how you could. You've done that with a different property, with a different studio. It's not a Warner Brothers studio, is it? It's an Ubisoft game. So how is Warner Brothers? Come on, we can do this. MultiVersus, definitely 100%. I mean, I might even put Scorpion in the thumbnail as well now. Like just like just for that, it might be Robin, Scorpion, and the Powerpuff Girls. I'm doing it, and I'm going to end it on that note because it's dope. It's 100% dope. That's what's going to happen. If you enjoyed, smash that thumbs up. Don't forget there's more where this came from. I'm Anthony Allen. Thank you for listening. Yeah.